In setting our theme for this year, we would like to draw the audience's attention to the wonderful cross-fertilization that exists between literature and music. We have a piece that has always been very close to me, which is a Lincoln portrait by Copland. Copland, who was a passionate Democrat, very much wanted to put into a musical setting some of the key speeches of Abraham Lincoln. But instead of setting them to music, he did, which I think would have been very difficult to make convincing, he does something far more intelligent, which is like a sort of French melodrame, in which a reciter speaks, and then surrounded, both before, after, and sometimes during, by music. And so you get an almost cinematic atmosphere. So the music of Copland acts as a sort of atmospheric illustration of Lincoln's character, and it reflects the things that Lincoln is talking about, whereas while before, during and after, the reciter is either quoting from Lincoln or about Lincoln. And the combination of the spoken word and the musical parallelly flowing underneath the words like a sort of river is extraordinarily effective and moving. After this piece, we move to the extremely well-known, but no less good because it is well-known, Rhapsody in Blue by Gershwin for piano and orchestra, which of course Gershwin wrote for himself and originally with a sort of jazz band. It was subsequently made into several different versions, even several different orchestral versions, not orchestrated by Gershwin. The Rhapsody combines all that is popular about music which was very then accessible to the public in New York in the 1920s and 30s, with serious musical statements. It's very difficult to actually pin Gershwin down to what sort of a composer he was and in what category he belongs. The answer is, it's impossible. He lies midway between straight classical music, popular music, jazz. He found a unique niche in not being able to be categorized. Of course, the sheer brilliance and originality of his music and the way he writes so well for piano is what really makes this piece so effective. And the interaction between piano and orchestra, the extremely difficult and challenging parts for particularly the brass and of course the solo clarinet, set up this dialogue between orchestra and piano, which will never fail to give pleasure to the public, or indeed, I hope, to the soloist and of course to the conductor conducting. Mussorgsky's Pictures in an Exhibition is of course an absolute staple of the orchestral repertoire, but for many reasons. Mussorgsky was a very underrated composer at the time of his death. He died very young, alcoholic, but of all this group of late 19th century Russian composers, without any doubt the most original, the most mysterious. The pictures is a very special example, because in this case he did not even attempt an orchestration of them, and he wrote them purely as a piano piece. But they are vastly more well known in the justly acclaimed orchestration of Ravel. He deserves at least 50% of the credit. And he brings to life this divine music. Everybody knows the opening. Bum, 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 which represents, of course, the promenade, because between each movement you have, as it were, members of the public walking between each picture to absorb it and reflect on its material. Perhaps the most curious, and which always makes me quite amused, is the mistranslation of the final movement, which I always knew as the Great Gate of Kiev. But 20 years ago I was in Kiev conducting a concert, and it so happened my hotel was very near where this supposed Great Gate of Kiev was. And of course I knew the music very well, but I'd never seen the gate. But having both conducted the piece and played it on the piano, in its immense majesty and grandeur, I was expecting something more or less like the l'Arc de Triomphe in Paris. And so I was extremely disappointed when I came to this gate, and it was pathetically small and not really great or grand at all. Only subsequently that I then discovered that it was actually never called the Great Gate of Kiev. It was called the Bogatyr Gate of Kiev, and there was absolutely no reason why it should be extremely grand and immense and majestic. It just shows how the power of music can totally influence the idea of what something is. I think this program is important for me because, as well as undoubtedly containing 3 masterpieces, it also shows off the immense versatility of the orchestra that can be extremely flexible stylistically between a mid-20th century masterpiece, an American almost jazz piece, and a late 19th century Russian piece, but orchestrated in the 20th century.